Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to another development session of Notula. So off camera, I have already done everything with security and stuff. I had to do some cleanup on my test data as well. And I will now quickly show you what I did. So what I initially did was like I had a just to test, of course. I had a pre-authorized method on here that actually checked my scope claims my authority of the currently logged in user. But then I moved it, of course, to because yeah, that will be the default that you have a organization. But now I moved it, so now you can see that I have here on any request I assert that he should have the organization claim. Organization claim meaning that he has an organization. Then I have a couple of endpoints which require you to be authenticated, but you don't need to have the organization claim. And that is here the put on sessions. That's an update of your session, which makes sense. You don't need to be in an organization to update your session. I mean, the whole concept of updating your session is actually switching organizations. So it would be weird that you would have to be in an organization or to switch to an organization. Can't do that. The get organizations, yeah, this one is also required to log in to actually select an organization. And the post organizations, this is required to create an organization. If you're not part of an organization, you should be able to create an organization. I think, well, I was going to say most organization stuff will probably be unscoped, but that's not really true because, of course, yeah, updating, well, technically it could be true, but updating an organization, for instance, we might say like, yeah, you can only update your current organization. But technically that is not a requirement. So I think we will see when we start doing that. For instance, also like adding users to an organization. Do you have to be inside of that organization? Do you have to be logged into that organization? It depends on how you make your endpoints. If you do API organizations and then organization ID and then users and whatever and stuff, then it's fine. I think theoretically you could say like, well, you can check, of course, the user has access to that organization. Then, so for security reasons, but then you can say like you actually don't have to be logged into the organization. If you, however, change your endpoint and you say slash API slash users, for instance, which is technically what I am doing with the meetings. So it will be slash API slash users or slash members. And then you're actually looking up your members at your current organization. And I think that's how my endpoints will be more organized. Like from a user perspective, what are my organizations? Like I'm changing my organization, I'm changing my thing. And then the next thing is like from a user point of view, I am changing my meetings, I'm changing thingy. But which meetings are relevant for you at that moment is actually whether you are logged in or not. So for instance, the slash API slash, I'm not going to call it users, but slash members. Yeah, no, it should be, probably I'm going to do API slash thing slash members because it makes more sense than members of the organization. The meeting notes and whatever you have are more related to, yeah, they're also part of the organization, of course, but they're not really related to the organization. Organization members are really one thing. But yeah, we'll see. So, and then of course you still have the register and the login, which you don't have to be authenticated at all because otherwise you wouldn't be able to authenticate in the first place. And also the actual, where is the actual magic? Where does this claim come from? Let's see my JOT authentication converter, which is written down here. Yeah, my SonarCube is still completely like doesn't understand I'm using tabs instead of spaces. I don't know why. I also don't see why he thinks these are 6 spaces. Probably because he thinks every tab is 2 spaces, I guess. I don't know. But so here, what you see, this is a converter I do, and the only thing that I do here is check whether the JOT has the claim organization ID, which I only set if you actually are logged in. I could also check claim is not null, I guess. But for now, this is definitely fine because I have full control over this token. So it should be fine. And then I just add a simple grant authority of the organization claim. And then it works. And that's it. And so now I can, my meeting controller, where's my meeting controller? controller. I don't have to do anything special here. And this just does everything, as you can see in my tests, where I have the anonymous user. It will get unauthorized. And if it says without organization, then it gives me a forbidden. The forbidden, of course, comes from my exception handler, where I've added now an authorization denied exception is forbidden. I did think about this, whether it should be forbidden or unauthorized, but in a certain sense, you are like, I mean, when you're an anonymous user, you can say like, well, you're not authorized enough or authenticated basically enough. You can still change it and maybe that will do it. But here you have chosen an organization and you're trying to reach something which you have no access to. I mean, like it could be that you are part of the organization, but you just logged into the wrong one. That could well be. But then from that point of view, you are just forbidden. You can't access this. And this is also more about like the whole, it's not about the resource, whether you have access to the resource or not. It's more like, do you have access to this endpoint? And if you say like, well, you didn't log in as an, you didn't log in at all, then okay, well, you have to log in and then you will get access to it. And without organization, it's like, well, you are logged in. Yeah, I guess in a certain sense, this is also, it was really difficult to decide whether this was forbidden or unauthorized. I think the reason why I went to for forbidden as well is like, as I said, if you logged in, so I can't say you're not authenticated. You are authenticated. I know exactly who you are. You're just not fully authenticated. So at this time, you don't have access to this endpoint yet. Well, yet you don't have access to this endpoint, and that will of course change if you create an organization and you actually start doing stuff. And then, so there's a small nuance there. The other bigger thing, of course, is my exception handler that it uses, as I said, soon. In the future, we will use the pre-authorization. This is the wrong one. The pre-authorization system, which I think I still have. Yes, I still have enablement security on here as well. But we will do that to actually check roles. And then, for instance, we will say like, adding members to an organization. Well, you have to be an admin. For this, well, you need to be an owner. For this, you need this role. For this, you need that role. So there will be, that actually is better in it. Quick fix. Quick fix. Voila. Okay. So that's why I went for forbidden instead of unauthorized, just to make sure that when I add the other role checks, which really is a forbidden one, I don't end up with too much hassle and having to take too many steps back on my decisions made earlier. Okay, so all these tests, they basically work. And then the only thing I still have to do is select, well, enable my test for multiple, of course, but yeah, that will work as well. Okay, maybe I have to copy paste it from here, I guess. You might have noticed that my principal has also changed. My principal is now attached to the session, which actually makes more sense than the user. I have also renamed my sessions to actually be the correct, well, to match my new strategy, which is the user and then the organization he's part of. So that also means that if you, for instance, see you have here the Eduardo Christensen, which is logged into Spore, and then you have just Eduardo Christensen, which means he has no organization. We might want to, I don't think there is that much need for it, but you might want to, for instance, duplicate it, saying like, oh, well, you have Eduardo Christensen and here is logged in without organization, and then in another session, he's also logged in without organization, but that one actually is still valid because this one is expired. And then, yeah, naming wise, I will call this Eduardo Christensen, I don't know, 1, 2. I will have to see what I'm going to do with naming then. But as I said, it actually normally shouldn't matter too much. Multiple, he knows he knows exactly the same. That's correct. Meeting info meeting. So all I have to do is I have to add a meeting. At the moment, I only have one test meeting, so that's not gonna work very well. Although I think that if I go look my meeting, oh, I didn't even create a meetings database yet. Okay, so I thought I already did, but I didn't, of course. So I might, well, of course, I have to do the same. Company Spore, yeah, team. That's a team project meeting. Project team meeting. Wow. Let's call it the retrospective meeting. I might not. Oh yeah, I might call this to. Et voila. And then what other test organizations do I have? I'm gonna add some more just in case. Then I have the Clover kickoff. Why not? Kickoff 2026. And then I'm gonna do the Sporer Q2 planning. Why not? I like these names. Okay, so then you see that Sporer actually has 3 meetings. Glover has one that's a bit in the middle. So that's good. Sporer pages meetings. Sporer retro. I'm only gonna do 2, I guess. Well, technically, I mean, like that's the nice thing about all this whole test meeting thing. I can easily just scale it up because this like okay, yeah, stream map, then return get response, and then I say is okay, and this is my expected response. The test is actually completely the same, and as a matter of fact, I think I could probably even like the non, multiple, and single. I think I could just merge them all into one, because here meetings is basically just an empty list. Maybe I should do that as a proof of concept as well. My get response is fully written in such that it is fully thingy. That's actually one of the things I also want to do. Is like now I have a base controller test. I want to do a endpoint test, and then maybe I even want to split, like saying it's a get endpoint test, it's a thingy endpoint test, and then I can more easily do all of this. The only problem, of course, then is that the mocking is going to be problematic. But I think if you have enough, I mean, as I said here, the get endpoint, well, this is all the same. Yeah, so then I just might say like, okay, mock service and stuff. And yes, okay, maybe we should just do that right now. Anyway, so the multiple, let's see. This should just automatically work. Et voila. So what am I thinking? Actually, I'm thinking, why not do I have a public abstract class and get all tests? Maybe I have to extract this even more to saying like it's an endpoint test, but I'm not sure if that's really gonna do that much. And I'm also thinking the get response, is that actually part of the get all, or should this be part of the create? Because I think the create might return the exact same object. So this actually will become more part of. Well, we'll see. But so you get all test, and actually I'm gonna call this type T. And then what is my ID? My idea is that I can have here an add parameterized test. And I say add source what is it called? Method sources. Method source. And this then will be get. Okay, maybe not the. Um, I'm thinking how I want to pass this list as stuff, and that's a bit annoying. Yeah, because I was a concept now that I said like, well, actually this is single, multiple, and none. I can easily put this as a parameterized test. Let's because all I have to do is that this method takes a list of test meetings, and then basically all of this remains exactly the same, except that meetings is empty, so this can go away. And I say this is the principal, this is the info, and then all of this is basically independent of why is this meeting? Okay, meeting. And then here I should do a public static list get, and then I have a list of. Okay, this is not how I would organize them, but whatever. That's exception. Yeah, I already have the throw exception. The method to get in get all of the organic list string. What? What do you mean? It's not applicable to the type string. This is how it always used to be. What did I do to break my code? Did I do a get? Here, this get, I think. Oh, get here, of course, I added this one. Cases. Okay, that's better, I think now. Okay, and so this, I'm curious if you run this. Enum string identifier, enum header name. Yeah, okay, well, this we can leave out for now. Stop. Okay, I'm actually gonna put my controller test on the left so you can see it. I think he might still struggle with like this, finding these cases. Nope, I think that actually is fully fixed. And so this, let me actually check whether it also shows up in here. What the hell? Extension, deprecate extension. Oh yes, again. Oh nice. Organization controller test. We're not organization. We're doing meeting. That's session. Session. Where is meeting? Here, meeting. Meeting controller test. Get all, and then it will have an X. And this one has meetings empty. Meetings one. Yes. Except I'm gonna do this one first, of course. So this works. I'm just not sure how I'm gonna make it clear that you have to implement all these cases. Because this does not do the same as single, multiple, and none. And this is then the success case. The none is easy. It's more the single and multiple that I'm a bit worried about. How am I gonna make sure that this gets done? I'm also not sure if I can make an abstract. This is the private. I'm also not sure how I'm going to do the session. Maybe I shouldn't do this. I'll think about it a bit later. This now is a bit too much, but so this is a clear example of how you can actually technically use. Well, I'm going to put this down, of course. Easily use like the whole test. Well, it's another example of how easily creating like this test object allows you to test or write tests like without much effort. I have all my tests here. Yeah, unauthenticated, of course, like doesn't even rely on um, this doesn't even rely on anything. But also like, yeah, getting the response and creating the actual request, that's very easy because you have all the information in your object and you just pass the object and you don't really have to create actual content JSON in here. Now that comes with the downside. It makes the tests less clear as what they actually expect. For instance, here you can say like, okay, well, do a get and get to this endpoint. Okay, that is pretty clear. Um, but for instance, you expect a constant JSON of expected response. Then I'm like, okay, what's the expected response? You don't have it actually written here what it is. And then if you go look at get response, then you might be like, what actually are we expecting? This is not clear at all. I mean, like, huh? You have to really be able to read, say, like, okay, yeah, okay, so it's a stream. So you create for each object, you create this get response object, okay, with ID and name, okay, ID and name, and then it becomes an array, okay, separated, like, okay. So it's not clear if this would really literally be like written out as in like, yeah, well, this is open bracket and an object and this and this and this and this and this what I really expect. Okay, then it's clear. Downsides, of course, maintenance. If for some you say like my meeting here, my this meeting, oh, I have to make a change to it, the ID, for instance, or whatever, because ID is so okay. Because once you say like, well, actually, oh, yeah, I'm moving this, I'm changing this, yeah, then you have to update all your tests. Or if you say like, oh, well, I'm not just returning ID and name, which in the future will definitely be that we say like, well, we return ID, name, maybe a description. If you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like I don't know how many tests you have, um, then this becomes very difficult to maintain. As I said, like this will probably even be moved out as soon as we have the create and whatever thing. It will be moved out because the response will be it will be identical. So this will actually move to the higher level in the actual controller test, well, meeting controller test. But then it's easy to maintain because you can just add it here, saying, okay, test meeting, which object of the meeting actually has to pass to it? Okay, you add your test object, and you can verify that your tests work. Easy as that. And that's what I think most people don't like, or why they don't do proper unit testing. And lots of unit testing is because they say like, yeah, every small change I do, I basically have to yeah, I basically have to rewrite all of my tests again, and I have to update my test, and oh, it takes too much time and too much effort. Well, that's because you didn't write your tests in such a way that you made them easily maintainable. Tests is also code, and I'm also guilty of that. That in a lot of cases, you're just like, well, technically, like, yes, I know it's code, but I don't really care too much about my actual test code. It just has to work, and that's it. Of course, then you're just making it more difficult on yourself in the future. By saying like, well, I don't care about it right now. I will care about it in the future. Yes, you will care about it in the future, but you're not going to care enough to actually fix it. So you're going to care about it, and then you're like, oh, now I have to maintain the code again. I have to fix the code again. And in the end, you will just decide not to write tests anymore for the sake of it's not worth it. But okay, but so now we have actually our controller tested, and of course this does not work. Our controller works, but nothing else works because our meeting service just throws an exception. The meeting service. I think, I mean, like this exam is again like an idea of like you should standardize stuff. For instance, here my unauthenticated, my without organization. This will be part of all of my controllers basically. This is probably something I want to say like, I should think of a way I can extract this. I don't care how, I don't care thingy, but like it would be very nice that I can just extract this and say like, well, yes, I want to have an endpoint that is authenticated and the without organization be for any endpoint, any protected endpoint. So I might just I'm thinking whether I want to have it done automatically because then it might not be very visible in the code. I mean, like because you extend from it. Another way, of course, would be that you say here void unauthenticated, and you say super dot unauthenticated. That you just say like, well, I want to have the authenticated or not, and that they just have a method, and the method actually doesn't do anything unless you really call it from a test. That would work as well. The only thing is with anonymous user is a bit ridiculous. So that one I think about and see how I'm going to do it. But that's for later. So the meeting service test, we have the exact same, of course, what we always have. You have a class, you have the get all, and then you have a add test. And the first one we of course write is principal null. Why? Because it's an easy one, and saying that assert that throws or thrown by, and here we say meeting service dot get all of null is instance of a no pointer exception npe dot class. FK here we also say private final meeting service, no meeting service. Yes, this is the wrong test. And this test will immediately fail. As we expect, as we want. And then you say objects require non-null principal. And we run it again, and it passes. Perfect. So this is one of the things that I now have to think about. I mean, like the meeting controller basically verified that you have the oh, that's actually something I want to do as well. Yes. Okay, so here in the controller, you verified that the user who makes the request, he actually has a claim in his token. So that technically means that his principal should always have an organization. However, in your meeting service, which I am lost again, in your meeting service, you don't know that. The principal, if you look at just principal in itself, it has an organization ID, which is a long. And if you do get organization, which is organization ID, then you will see that you will get an optional back. So not just principal null, but I should also have a test and say void principal without organization. And this should throw an illegal state. Principal, okay, say final principal equals test session dot Alison Dach principal. I should not use Christian thingy for this because the Christian one has expired. Dot is instance of not unsupported. Oh my god. Not Java security. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. My code is a bit too much and accidental pressing on enter. And this is an illegal state exception. Nothing more, nothing less. Of course, so what I actually want to do is now I have an organization ID, and if you check where actually it's being used, it is being used nowhere. And my whole logic, my reasoning is that this used to be a record class, was that I can't keep this record class because I will have a long, in a record class you can't say like, well, you can't return optional on this organization ID. Why? Because a record class has to be fully transparent, so you have to have access to the actual objects and whatever. However, in my code, I don't like it, because if that would be the case, then that means that if I do here principal, which I'm of course not really gonna do, principal get organization ID, yeah, I'll throw whatever, this thingy, but like this is now just organization ID. If I do this, yeah, then now I always have to check, is it null or not? And I can easily forget it. And if I then make a mistake, then it returns a no pointer exception, which is not that bad yet. I mean, but you have nicer ways to handle it. So just to explicitly make sure, like, watch out, this can be null, I mean, optional for it. The problem, however, is that now that means I always have to deal with it. So it means that now I have to say or else throw, like basically what he was saying, or else throw, and then illegal state exception, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't always want in my code to say it. And if you look at the actual principle, then you can actually see that currently the organization ID is only used in tests. So this will be the first place where we actually use the organization ID. And honestly, I mean, like in most cases, if the organization ID is not present, you can't do anything but throw an exception. And optional is nice when you actually have something you can do with the optional case. You say, okay, he's missing, fine. Okay, then I will do this. Like, oh, if he's missing, then I can do that. Or in that case, I have to do this. But in this case, it's like, yeah, it's not there. What can you do? Well, you have to throw an exception. So I thought, well, technically, I mean, like, what I then have to do is I don't have to keep this an optional. I should actually return a regular long, and just say here if, well, probably I can do something as optional of nullable organization ID dot or else throw illegal state exception. But then I probably also want to clean this up a bit, and I say just say illegal state exception new. I'm not very good at adding messages to my object, or to my exceptions. Also because typically, I mean, like there is no information. What can you say? Like, well, organization ID was null. Don't you think that if you have a stack trace that traces back all the way to this method, and then based on this code, you can't figure out that it must have been organization ID that was null? I'm pretty sure you can. So now basically what I am saying is that actually what I want to do is probably I want to use the validate is true or not null. Not null is not, yeah, because it's not okay, but so is true. No, actually I have to do the state, valid state organization ID not null. So this is basically how you get also an illegal state exception. The message of the exception is the validated state is false. Yes, that state is very useful. Validated the stateful condition is true, otherwise throwing an exception. This method may be used on validating according to an arbitrary Boolean expression, so it's validating the illegal state exception. As far as I know, this is also the only state you can do, because I think, for instance, if you do an all the other one, matches pattern and whatever, I think this just throws an illegal argument exception. Okay, illegal argument exception. The valid state is the only one that actually throws an illegal state. So now you can also just do return organization ID. And this might be a bit easier to read. But so here again, you throw an illegal state exception where it will throw exactly on this on this line, basically in your code. Well, technically, I mean, technically it will throw somewhere in the whole validator on this validate class. Okay. But if you see a stack trace, it will point to this line, and then you will know, oh, damn, my organization ID was null. So now I'm just curious. Of course, this is now is user only, and actually I should say assert that principal dot organization ID, assert that thrown by is illegal state exception, is instance of my illegal state exception, yes, okay. Static import, this one we do away. Okay, quick fix, yes, of course, replace, why not? And voila. See, it's so weird. My formatting on my desktop is different from on my other device. I have to fix that. Huh. I have to see which one I prefer. So here is not contains, but just is equal to. Is this more than 80 characters? Yeah, okay, it is. Or I might not have formatted it. It's on the previous thing, but that's a bit weird. Because I mean, like clearly here, this, yeah, I can't properly clearly see it because it's not side by side. I mean, clearly this was too long and just not formatted. Okay, so this should still work. Continue, I don't care about it. It's beating server, that's not correct. The principal, and now I want to make this back into a record class with a long user ID and a long organization ID. And then this goes away. I have this. This doesn't serve any purpose. This can all go away. And this, yes. This I understand. Okay, this is okay by me. Redundant method is the same as the default one. I don't think so because I validate my state. How can you think this is the same one? Well, but clearly this is not the case. Compliant solution. Compliant, okay, yeah. I don't think there is anything for the method as this, but so this is a. He thinks this has no side effect. That's annoying. But so this I'm fine with. I'm fine with returning the long object instead of a long, like a long, instead of the long primitive. I'm perfectly fine with that. Honestly, I don't care whether it's the class version or whether the thing it will do auto unboxing and whatever, it will work. It's more that I now know that I don't have to check it. I get a long back. I don't have to worry about it being null. I know it can never be null. So I can easily do this, and then if it's not null, it will throw an exception. So that's why also if you do the service test and if you do the get all, then this will work and this will also not work because this will just throw an illegal state exception because we're trying to access the organization ID, which it doesn't. But this one I should actually flag as like an false positive. Probably if I do my optional off, it will record it, but I don't like it. I prefer to use the valid state and the validation, like make my code consistent everywhere. So this is interesting. Okay, but so what do we do in our meeting service? Well, technically we only have to call the We don't have anything right now. Okay, so from here on, we basically only have to call the storage gateway, and we are good to go, I guess. Mostly good to go. Storage gateway, where again, I think the storage gateway we have typically decided to, yes, to not pass in the principals anymore. The storage gateway, that's where the principal should stop, because we are leaving our domain. I'm just checking, yes, user ID, find all by user ID. You'll say, okay, I want to find all. So here as well, a meeting service, I would have storage gateway. I would have, how did I call it in the user service? Yeah, okay, I really gave the full name. That's what I thought. Meeting storage gateway, this is what I would do. Search gateway dot find all by organization ID, and then I can simply say principal organization ID. Voila, and then you can return. And this is all that this has to do, basically. Basically, of course, we still have to write tests for it. We still have to actually inject the storage gateway, even have to write the storage gateway. So, but this is it. And this is where I'm also going to wrap up today. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.